We are all in this together, this world, connected through common experience, and now a common mission. From our homes, to our hospitals, to the edges of discovery, the race has become a relay, and we are all on the same team. We work together across borders and disciplines, because we are one world, united in our humanity. We are all in this together, and we are stronger because of it.
When exactly did everyone stop pretending to care about Africa?
There are people dying now.
That was all the rage back in the day. You know, back in the time of Live Aid. Back in 1985, when a man born in the UK would have been expected to last no more than 71 years. And don't get me wrong, Bob Geldof's heart was in the right place. Unfortunately, however, foreign aid increases never correlated positively with GDP growth or famine reduction on the African continent. It did serve to soothe the conscience of the chattering classes in the former colonial powers, though. So what has led to the staggering decline in famine mortality over the last 40 years?
Capitalism relies on free market conditions to create wealth and drive innovation.
Yeah. So 35 years ago, we were told that our lives were so decadent and so luxurious that anything we could spare must be spared for those less fortunate than ourselves. Despite the efforts of the benevolent first world countries, abject poverty continued to grow into the 1990s. But then, something amazing happened. Despite the world's population growing by 2 billion over the following 20 years, the number of people living in abject poverty around the world more than halved. While in 1995, almost 1 in 3 people lived in abject poverty or on less than $1.90 a day, that figure has now fallen to around 1 in 10.
What a time to be alive.
Great news! Or so you'd think. I mean, yeah, there were fewer people starving to death, so that's good. While famine mortality has undoubtedly dwindled, it hasn't done so at the same rate worldwide. While famine was all but eradicated in Asia following the death of Chairman Mao in 1976 and the overthrow of Pol Pot in 1979, more than double the amount of Africans that died in the 1980s from famine died in the first decade of this century. But in the last decade, something truly uplifting appeared to be happening. It seemed that for the first time, global eradication of famine was a realistic objective. So what had changed? Was 40 years of global interventionism and foreign aid finally paying dividends? Well, maybe, but probably not. Most studies seem to suggest that rising living standards of sub-Saharan Africans over the last 10 years are down to increasing access to modern technology, whether that be mobile phones and the internet opening up potential new markets to businesses, or modernised agricultural machinery and weather-resistant crops leading to steadier food production. But the story gets even better. Not only were billions lifted out of abject poverty, but those of us enjoying relative comfort saw almost every measurable aspect of our lives improve over this same time period. So why all of a sudden in 2020 are 265 million people at imminent risk of starvation, when last year it was only 100 million? The simple fact of the matter is that certain sections of society want to halt the progress of those around them, even at the detriment of their own liberties and living standards, and they will cling to whatever excuse they have at hand. In 1985, the political and social elites united with a heavy heart to inform us that the selfish way of life of the common man in the developed world was responsible for the miserable and moribund conditions in the third world. Yet it was only when the underdeveloped nations began to imitate our market-based economies that any tangible improvement was observed. Had this virus broken out in 1985, so few of us would have lived to the age of high risk that in all probability life would have continued as usual. But this is 2020, and this is the new normality. Our entire way of life must change in order to maintain just one aspect of all of our improved living standards.